So yeah, I am Deanna's little sister, and I am a limited licensed social worker. But I recently just passed my licensing exam, so I will be fully licensed very soon. And I am a child and family therapist full time. But I also am doing part time at another private practice. So pretty much, I'm a therapist. That's the brunt of it, and I work with trauma work. And a lot of different mental health issues. So that's pretty much a little bit about me.
So, like she said, like my sister said, like Jessica said, she is a therapist. So we really wanted to bring awareness. I know last month it was domestic violence, ADHD, breast cancer, a lot of awareness for that month. And of course, we had to take a couple weeks off, get our own lives together, kind of like our own mental breaks, and so much stuff going on in our own lives personally. But we are back, and we come in with some gems, with somebody that can give some really good advice and resources for those who may be going through these things. Yeah, start with.
All right. So for today's topic, I guess we could start off with ADHD just until we get Tamara back. I think she might be in the waiting room too. But just to kind of start off, ADHD is pretty common. Like, a lot of people know what it is, but they don't really know what it is. And it can really act as different things. So some people who may think that they have ADHD might just have trauma or like anxiety. So it's really good to have a proper assessment, like a diagnosis for it, and go through the whole evaluation process, which can be hard. I'll get into that a little later. But ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And what that means is that you could have either a combination of attention, focus and attention problems, or and hyperactivity, meaning like you fidget, you move around a lot, you're impulsive, or you can have either or. And that's where it gets confusing for some people, because if you only have a lack of attention or like focus problems, you don't really think you have ADHD, but it could really actually be that. And other people just have impulsivity, like they are pretty hyperactive and they move around. So you can either have a combined type or you could have one or the other. It's very underdiagnosed in girls because it looks different sometimes in girls. So boys are overdiagnosed sometimes. Sometimes it's like just trauma and like they're getting a diagnosis of ADHD, but really it is it could be something else. So you really want to make sure you're paying attention to some of the signs that I'll list off. But before I jump into anything else, just from based off the first information, Portia, DeeDee, do y'all have anything so far? Any questions about that? Or
I mean, yes and no, like, because I only really, and this what we really need to clarify, it's not just for kids.
no,
It is not just for kids, because it's
Absolutely
some
not.
adults.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like some adults are, and that's why I want to bring awareness, because some people may think they just like something is like wrong with them in other ways, but like you said, it could just be that. So just to know, just know that it's not for just for kids. However, it would be nice if we could take it a little more serious. I know typically black people usually don't like to, go straight to like labeling their children with these type of things, like these type of diagnoses, but we gotta take it a little more serious, because now you are wondering why your child can't concentrate in school, why your child can't keep a job, or things like that. But this is the type of stuff that you have to really pay attention to.
yeah, it's actually funny you said that, because with adults symptoms, especially folks who have never been diagnosed with ADHD, it comes with a lot of financial problems and responsibility, because ADHD is impulsive, but not just with behavior, like they're just moving a lot. It's impulsive in a lot of things, and that could be they might overspend, or like might just purchase big items and don't even recognize why they're doing that. It's an impulse to do it that they can't quite control. So when it comes down to recognizing the signs, just really observing your behavior. Like, are you a person who easily loses track of conversations? Like, when someone's talking to you, do you have to like jump back into that conversation and you're like, what the hell are they just talking about? Like, you just have to know, like, what was going on. So once you recognize that, once you realize like, oh yeah, I do doze off in conversations a lot. I do have a difficult time concentrating. I do have a hard time staying organized, and like it looks like messy, but really it's just like I literally forgot this one item because I got sidetracked and had another thought that led me to do something different. So it could seem like be things like that, and especially in adults, it shows up that way. Children, it shows up a lot in school, at least that's where it gets the most attention. It shows up at home. In order to have ADHD, you have to have it in multiple areas of your life. It has to affect more than one area. So it has to affect like school or work, home life, your social life, things like that. It can't just be one thing, because then it could definitely be another thing. Like, it can be stress in itself. So you can definitely tell the difference. If it's like affecting you all the time, like in every situation, one thing, and this is not like a real fact, but it could be. If you're a person who you drink coffee or like caffeine and it doesn't have an effect on you, and you find yourself having all these things, then that's probably a really tall tale sign that you have ADHD, because it's a stimulant, and what it does is it calms you down. Stimulants calm down people with ADHD. So when you have caffeine, it counteracts in some way, and it really just neutralizes your body instead of helping you to get the energy that coffee is supposed to give you. So that's kind of a sign that you can tell too, if you do actually have like it's a neurodivergent illness. So you can kind of tell because it really affects your brain in a lot of ways.
By the way, my sister got a master's.
I do. I have a master's.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to put that
Right. She said all that factual stuff, and that's all you had to say.
Listen, I wanted to make sure everybody knew that she already said that she was official. But come on now, she official.
Yeah.
And you know, it's crazy that you're talking about, you know, the side effects and the signs to get it. But you know what's so crazier is that you mentioned the Black community and how, you know, it's harder for us and it's harder to diagnose women. So I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling myself. I have another master's in school counseling. COVID messed up my internship, so I'm waiting for my final internship to be done. And then, however, you know, there's this other stigma that we tend to not talk about when it comes to diagnosing our children, especially African American children. The reality of it is, when we place our children with getting labeled in the school system, it is another gateway to bringing our children into more of the criminal world. And I'm going to touch on that because why? They're building prisons off of IEPs. So when you think about if your child qualifies for certain things, the government, as well as that school district and that community, get extra funding for labeling your child with an IEP. And so they make it harder for African Americans to get more of the more serious diagnoses, the ones that we're starting to see. ADHD is the number one diagnosis that they always label African American children. And I can tell you, statistics show that most African American children are not ADHD.
Trauma.
They're not. It's trauma.
Yeah.
And that's the problem when it comes to mental health. People aren't ready to deal with, first of all, a person of color. Secondly, a child of color, and now you're trying to label that person and not understand the backgrounds and the stigmas that come with an African American children. They're not cultural competent. They don't know how to approach our children. And so they're quick to say, oh, you know, that child is ADHD. From personal experience, my daughter, who is 10 years old, has brain damage, frontal lobe brain damage from having seizures. Deanna experienced all of that with me. To this day, that started at the age of 2, and here it is 10. She's still not diagnosed. Why? Because girls' social cues are very harder to read. So you touched on that. However, you have these individuals that go into rooms, especially in the school system. They're not counselors. They're not certified diagnosers. They're social workers that are quick to say, oh, well, I observed this child and they're ADHD. Well, here it is. You have an actual counselor reading 150 a 170-page report, and you've only spent 5 minutes with my child.
Yeah.
And see, and this is where I like to do a lot of advocating for parents to let them know what their rights are, because the thing is, don't go in that school system and just take that 5-minute result, word for scouts for this white woman that's standing in front of you. And I hate to bring race into it, but African Americans don't typically go towards a social helping profession. So we're already limited within that. But I just wanted to touch on that little aspect, because when it comes to just labeling our children, we don't have the accessibility, let alone factual education that is going to solidify and back our children up. And ADHD is the number one diagnosis that most school systems are going to diagnose and label our children with. And so be cautious with that ADHD and ADD. A lot of times it really is just trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, it acts as a mask almost for some people, because with any kind of stress, you're going to be disoriented, you're going to be distracted, you're going to be anxious, and that anxiety turns into hyperactivity to some people, or impulsivity. So it really acts as the same thing, and it mimics it, but it could be definitely a lot different. So you have to really actually get an evaluation, a real evaluation from like a psychiatrist or somebody who actually is in that field, and like not just any psychiatrist, but like one who's certified in like ADHD. I cannot call myself an ADHD specialist. I work with kids who have ADHD, but I'm not a specialist. I train in a lot of other things, like trauma-related things. So you have to be careful with that label too, and like putting those people in the right places with the right people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the facts.
Yeah, facts.
Well, yeah,
Honestly, I think you guys hit on something that it kind of reminded me of the misdiagnosing, right, of children. Because like if kids are super hyper in school, like you said, they mostly want to just try to label them, okay, they're a bad child, or they have ADHD. They never look at the other spectrums of what might be going on with that child, and that's also due to because they do not have the capabilities to notice the signs as well. That child might just be bored, and also might be
absolutely,
literally
a very high intellectual child. IQ might be out the roof, but they're not fully engaging in what they're being taught in school. So they just label them, oh, this kid is just a troubled child. They just can't pay attention. No, they're bored. But did you even test to see that maybe this child
surpassed their
intellect is on a different level, and they're not being stimulated mentally with knowledge, because there has been many cases where kids was diagnosed with being ADHD or a troubled child, and later on find out, no, this child IQ is way surpassed what it's supposed to be at their age, and they were learning at a different level, but they never looked at that, especially, again, not to bring race into it, because they were African American child.
There you go.
That's the issue.
Yep. And see, and it's funny that you mentioned that particular piece, because autism is the number one leading thing, honestly, that is not labeled and should be labeled.
Yes.
There is really a such thing as educational autism, where children can function in the normal world and other surroundings and not in a classroom.
Literally.
And I think it's something that needs to be more talked about. It needs to be more prevalent. I do think that there needs to be more research and studies on it. I do think that that's what my daughter suffers from. And it's just, you're right, that misdiagnosis is a key component. Why? Because no one wants to deal with the true issues of mental health. And ADHD it's a gateway to just be done with it and wipe it away.
Put them on meds and just be like, all right, calm down.
Yeah.
Like,
that is
Well,
forget
also
about
for
it.
the benefit, like you said, the schools benefit, the city, whatever, to get that money in those schools, because like you said, it's a number game. If we just continue to push out these kids, that these kids are this, that, and that, they know that comes with a dollar sign, they're winning in the end, even if it's hurting that child, and later on down the line. Because with being, and that's another thing I want to ask Jesse about, is why is it from you in your profession, from what you were saying, why is it so that in our community, when our child is labeled with these things, it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's okay to know that your child has this issue going on with them, so you can handle them properly. But when in our community, if you go to therapy about anything, not even just being diagnosed with something, it comes with a negative stigma, and then in turns it just rolls downhill. I can speak for myself. I'm a sexual victim advocate in the Army. So I deal with that. A lot of people don't want to come and talk about their cases or them being sexually assaulted or harassed because it's not supposed to, but it comes with a negative connotation if it gets out that they have, put in a report. Not that people might know what they put in the report about, but if they're getting moved and, whispers getting done, people start to ask questions and figure out like, okay, this person put in a case, not knowing on who or on whom or what it's about. It's just, okay, this person is an outcast because they came forward. Or this person wants to go see the chaplain or a counselor because they having mental issues. Okay, this soldier is weak or something like that. So now it's just from there, okay, this person is not eligible to go to school. This person is not able to do this, all because it's a negative thing. You're supposed to just be able to just take whatever life is throwing at you, especially in the profession that I'm in. Like, we deal with, you have your mental fortitude has to be strong, but we're still human, being away from our families and everything that's going on, and day-to-day life of what the Army brings, it really weighs heavily on your mental, and people don't really know how much, I don't want to steer the direction of the conversation, but knows how much the average person stress that they go through versus a person that's fighting for their country, so to speak, right? So, but I just know that's a big problem in our organization as well, and a lot of people don't talk about it.
It's spread throughout.
But I just wanted to hear from Jesse, like, why do you think, particularly in the African American community, it's such a negative thing to go and get help?
Because we've been harmed in the past and we have good reason to fear it. That's a trauma response. There's been times when the white community has tested us, like they've used us like guinea pigs in the lab and like done different things to harm us. So whenever you have a field that's primarily white, they're not going to want to come to you. They already have this idea that a social worker or a therapist is someone you can't trust because of who has been in those positions. So when you have more people like me, like breaking those barriers and like jumping into that system, and like Tamara, like moving into those systems, moving into rooms where you're creating space for other people, that's where people feel more safety. You don't know how many times I've had people come to me and like, I'm glad you're a black woman. I'm glad you're a young black woman in this position because I trust you. I trust you more. And when you have people that look like you and who know what you've been through to some extent, because I can't say I've been through what everybody else has been through, but I know I have an understanding of some things that a lot of my peers do not. So when it comes to that, you have to have that trust and safety piece, and that's where the lack of understanding is coming, because black people have not always had that in the past. And so I find it frustrating because I'm like, just go to therapy, do it. Like, do it, it's going to help. But also I know that I'm coming from a place where I had to grow into that as well and like understand it. So not everyone knows what the benefits are of it because they've been wronged in the past. They automatically think of like CPS, reports being created, or this person's going to call the cops on me or do whatever. They're going to send me to a mental hospital, which is not always a bad thing. I've had people tell me, I'm glad that you made that report because it really pushed me to like know that it was something wrong and I got the help I needed. So it could be a scary feeling. It can be something that's very daunting, but it could also be very hopeful. And I think that's what I want or more black people to understand, is that this is a scary thing, it's a scary feeling, but what you're already in is scary. So why not try something different? Why not try and break that barrier? That trust, though, that trust piece is a big part of it, I think. That stigma that surrounds mental health and what it looks like it's nothing wrong with you, and that's because that's a trauma response too. We're so used to being in fight mode and survival mode.
Yes.
And so we think everybody should be in that mode. We think everybody should be strong. I hate that word now. I don't like the word strong because I think it's very harmful. I think it's a very harmful word because now you are expected to be strong all the time. And not everyone is able to do that. You deserve to have moments where you have to relax and like sit down. Like because your body,
express your feelings for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
So being strong is being able to take that. We can redefine strong. I'll say that. Redefining strong to be something where I'm strong because I'm able to take a break when I need to. I'm able to talk to people when I need to. I'm able to ask for help when I need to. That takes strength. That takes courage to do.
That's real strength. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
to be vulnerable like that.
being vulnerable. Vulnerable. That's the word.
And listen,
I got you.
We
Yes.
touched on the children. We touched on the army. We know women. Of course, we are extremely emotional creatures already, and most of us are going to let it be known because we are the ones who voice ourselves the most. But we are also talking about the men as well. It's okay.
It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's funny you said that. Yeah.
Perfect timing. Yes, like we talking about y'all too. Like I know it's that saying that men can't cry or all that type of stuff, but no.
But there's a curveball to that answer, you guys. We also gotta look at and I learned this in one of my classes. And I think, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Your sister.
Jessica.
Jessica. So I think Jessica she gonna nod her head when I say it. There's this, so it's required to take this particular course throughout our master's studies. And it talks about our own cultural competence when it comes to African Americans. And that question, it's a catch-22 because we are our own worst enemies. We create that stigma ourselves.
Yeah.
And why? Because humor is our number one go-to when we're hurting. It's the way that we deflect our pain to deflect pain on someone else. And so we're quick to demean and judge and knock people down for wanting help. There's this TED Talk series that I remember watching in my class about how this African American, true African from I can't remember. Long story short, just Google TED Talk, African seeking help, whatever. Long story short, this guy was seeking help. He needed help. He was going through some mental stuff, and his family was like, oh, he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. And they just continued to laugh and talk about this man because he was seeking help, didn't understand that he was going through some stuff, was hearing some stuff in his head. Long story short, he ended up killing himself. And then all of a sudden, they were like, oh, well, why didn't he get help? Why didn't he go to somebody? Well, when he went to somebody, we clowned him. We talked about him. And so it goes back to that cultural aspect of that stigma. We create that stigma within our own culture because of the trauma that we've been through. And we want to see other people inflict the pain, and we think it's funny. And this is where I wish and I hope and pray that one day we can just get away from that. But it just...
Honestly, I think and me personally, I'm not a licensed therapist or anything like that, but me personally, I just think that it's the lack of knowledge, honestly.
It is a lack of awareness,
we don't get taught the tools
definitely.
to deal with it.
Lack of cultural competence is so real, but the access to it, we don't allow the access to educate people on this stuff because we're built up to already be a certain way in our culture. Yes. So that cultural piece is there, and it just, you hit it on the nail. But see, when you threw the army into it, you got to understand that now you're living by a certain code, right? There's this code of conduct that you have to follow, and it's like police. You're either with them or you're against them,
right?
And you got to fall in line. So if they see you trying to create a different dynamic and approach, now you're going to be the talk of the town because you're not with them. And so it's a fine line when it comes down to it.
Absolutely.
Which is still culture. But you mentioned a few things, and DeeDee brought this up about mental men being, not being able to kind of express themselves. That is very cultural. But also men are like the more likely people to complete suicide. They don't attempt the most, but they complete the most. They complete suicide the most out of anyone else. And it's because they've been asking for this help, like you said. They've asked for this help, and people are like, oh, you're okay, you're going to be fine. Or they do make an excuse, like, man up, you got this. And it's like, but no, right now I don't. And right now I'm asking for help. I'm like crying out loud and no one's hearing me. I'm drowning. And now I feel like I don't have any outlet. And I feel like that's something that's so, it's very disheartening to see because I've connected with young males in ways I never knew I could because I never thought that they and this is bad for me to say, but before I connected with males, I was like, I didn't really think that they were deep in tune into their emotions. But I have these young kids that I'm connecting with, these teens, and I'm starting to see young men as like young adult men, and they're really like struggling, and like nobody's there listening, and it's so tough. It's so tough to see that. So being able to recognize that and be able to know that there are things, and even with ADHD, it's a you usually have a co-disorder. So Portia, you touched on something. You was like, I think I'm going off subject. No, you're not, because all this is a co-disorder.
Yeah,
ADHD is usually is followed with depression or anxiety or something else along with it. So it's still all the same. And some people who have experienced a traumatic situation, it just heightens the ADHD. It's like matching each other to some extent. So all of this is all in the same realm. Mental health really collides. They really kind of mesh together with some things. So it's all around the same topic.
Well, speaking of, like you said, when everything pretty much collides together, once you not being able to, or actually, I mean, you don't have the knowledge, you don't know what's actually going on with yourself, and now you're falling into depression.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother, and then you got everybody else around you just like, oh, it's just a phase. And that's wild. That's wild. Me, myself, I definitely could say that I've been through the depression stage, but mainly because I think that it was because I wasn't satisfied with my hierarchies. I wasn't in a space that I knew that I had the potential to be in. And I feel like that's sometimes, not to give anyone an excuse, but when men act out the way they do, I mean, the kill, stealing, and destroying, because they don't have anybody to help them. They don't have, or they just don't know how to get to that point, get to that help. It's always been get out here and get it how you can. Like, now it's a trickle effect from whoever taught them that. Now they're going to teach their kids that instead of every time we mention like, go see a therapist, or, you know, try to like direct them in a job or anything, whatever it is that they need help in. It is just like, I'm the man. Like, I got this. That's just, that's crazy.
It is
So I have a question, Jesse, directed towards you. So can these things be developed later on in life? You know, some people might, out the womb, they might have it, but later on in life, could it be something, like you said, trauma, something triggers something, and now this person can be diagnosed with these disorders? Or
I would say for ADHD, it is more common that you've had that for a while. Like it's an onset in childhood, more than likely. Even if you don't get diagnosed in childhood, it is an onset, meaning that it starts there. And when it comes down to other things like depression, anxiety, and things like that, that stuff can definitely develop throughout your life. Not everyone has that at a young age. It could be situational. It could be a trigger for sure situation. But I would definitely say, because ADHD is like I said before, is neurodivergent. So that's like like that's in your brain. That's happening there. So it's more something you're going to notice that at a young age. Even if it's not recognized immediately by everyone else, the person going through it, they know to some extent what they're experiencing. They might not have answers, like DeeDee said. They are like, and that's where it leads to different things, different disorders, because now you're like losing self-esteem. Everyone expects you to be in this box, like you said earlier, Portia. Like they're putting these kids, and my mama and I were talking about this yesterday on the phone, and I was like, so I was getting really passionate about it, because I was like, they are putting these kids in these classroom, giving them pencil and paper for every single kid, and that's not how all kids learn. And it's very tough for them to be able to sit there in that classroom and have to have these expectations. Super bright kids, like kids with ADHD are so creative and innovative, and they don't get the opportunity to express that because they're forced to be in this box that they necessarily cannot even be in. And that's the same thing with autism. Y'all mentioned that earlier, and it's a very fine line too with how some things present with autism and ADHD. Obviously, some forms of autism, like it's a spectrum, so some forms you can obviously tell, like, okay, this kid may be autistic, but the ones who are on a different part of the spectrum, who are more what we call high functioning, they do have things that mimic other situations. So it could be that they're actually autistic, or maybe they just have ADHD and it's just undiagnosed. So you have to kind of think about that. Autism usually starts in childhood. That's an onset thing too. Onset mental health issue, but most of the other things are not onset in childhood, I would say. You might notice some things, but like anxiety, like DeeDee, you were mentioning depression, but it was probably some anxiety that led into that depression.
Oh, absolutely.
So
No doubt.
the idea, like being hard on yourself, I need to be able to reach these heights, and putting that pressure on yourself, thinking like I can do more and I know I can, that leads to a different thing. And once you're not able to meet those standards that usually you're setting for yourself, it kind of sends you into a down spiral, and then it does lead into depression. So a lot of these things do have co-disorders, and I keep mentioning that word because it's very likely that if you have one thing, you might have another thing going on, especially if it goes untreated. If it goes untreated for a while.
Absolutely agree. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, you have more questions.
Okay. Well, what was the other?
Now I got all the questions.
What was the other awareness? So we touched on ADHD. We touched on a little bit of anxiety and depression. Domestic violence. We can touch on domestic violence. It might have like a definition of, like, because it's multiple forms of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Anybody want to touch on those?
What I want to ask, another question, sorry. And this is directed to anybody that might have the information. For the most part, our podcast is held out of Michigan, Detroit, Michigan to be exact. So with that being said, is there, where people can go, right? Is there any like free clinics, or is there any workshops or anything like that that that's somewhere in the city, around the city, surrounding the city, that people can go and get these type of tests done, or speak to someone, or just ask questions?
Well, I definitely have a suggestion. I do have a therapist myself, and I found her off of today's
Psychology
Today, and you can literally put in you can build your own psychiatrist.
Literally.
Like, you literally can put
I
in
want
if
me
you
a
want
black woman.
Black woman or a man, how old, young, hours, specifically what they are specializing, your insurance, like Psychology Today. Psychology.
Yeah.
Psychology Today.
You got it.
Yes. So I think that's like one of the best, but also Northwest Activity Center. I had to visit them not too long ago. I had went in there and I did see a bunch of flyers. I don't know if it's specifically a place in there, but I do know that they can probably provide some type of resources as well. And then maybe Jessie want to add her places.
Yeah, so we're literally across from them right now at the studio. Highland Park has Ruth Ellis Center right here centrally. They are primarily for like the LGBTQ plus community, but they also service everyone. And it's a really good spot. If you are a person who's looking for a community for you and you're in that community, they are amazing. They have like a drop-in center. You can just kind of chill there. They just built this new housing, these new apartments that you can get, low-income apartments, low to no-cost apartments to stay in. And they're a part of Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network system. So that's where I work in community mental health. I'm at a CMH, is the shortened version of it. And Detroit Integrated Health Network, they changed their name up. Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network is DWIN, so DWIHN. If you look them up, that is for Wayne County. So you can find all of the CMHs in Wayne County. And when I say CMH, Community Mental Health Services, Medicaid clients specifically, they do take private insurance. So if you do have commercial insurance or private, they do service you, but it's first come, first serve for Medicaid because that is the priority in these systems. So you can look that up for Wayne County. You can look up how close one is to you, what services they offer. If you go online, if you can call their number, I can look up the number and put that out. They have hotlines, crisis centers. If you are really in crisis, you can go to an emergency room, and it is not. If you go to an emergency room yourself, and you always have the option to not have to go to inpatient. And I would say that that stigma has to start being broken as well, because inpatient is not always a terrible thing for everyone. But what they could do is give you resources. So at the very least, if you don't go into an inpatient hospital overnight, you could definitely get resources for help. So Detroit Wayne's number is, I'm just going to make sure I got the right number. They have a 24-hour helpline, 1-800-241-4949. And you can also just go online and kind of, just like DeeDee was saying about Psychology Today, like kind of literally look for what you're looking for at an agency. They don't really have therapists like specifically that you're going to see, but they do have agencies across Wayne County. And that's really because this is a system meant for people that are low income, and it's a lot of need right now in that community. Mm-hmm. So there will be a wait list that you're going to encounter. However, it's still good to have some kind of access to a therapist rather than doing nothing at all. So even if that wait list says, I can't see you until a month out, that's better than what you've been going through the last few weeks. So I will just prep you for that. There's more than likely going to be a wait list because there are not a lot of people in need. If you call up your insurance, if you look on the number on your insurance card, you can call them, ask them, I need some mental health services. Can you tell me what my insurance accepts? Who is the closest to me? And they should be able to help you out with that as well. If you just call your insurance company, that's probably one of the easiest ways to avoid extra fees. When it comes down to private insurance, if you get work insurance from your job, first of all, if you have a full-time job and you have benefits, you can ask your job if they have a program. I think it's called like a EAP program, yes. EAP program. And that is where you can get it's an employee assistance program where if you are suffering from mental health problems, your job will pay for those first few sessions, maybe like 12 sessions, I want to say 10 or 12 sessions. You have to kind of contact your employer about it. But you can go to your HR department, ask them about an EAP program, and see if they offer that service. More than likely, they can offer it to you virtually. There are a lot of options you can get access with. You don't have to go into an office if you don't feel comfortable. You can do it from the comfort of your home, go on your phone, your laptop, whatever you need to be able to access these services. There are a lot of opportunities. If you're in Oakland County, Macomb County, just kind of search up those names like CMH. I'm not as familiar with those counties because I don't work there in those counties, but you can definitely just look it up, like Oakland County, Washtenaw County, Macomb County, and look up CMH beside it. If you are a person who has like Medicaid or Medicare, things like that, you can easily find access to those services by looking up Community Mental Health Agency. Or you can go to Psychology Today. Like DeeDee said, there's also something called Therapy for Black Girls, and those are all Black women therapists that service different realms of therapy. And then you can look it up by insurance, you can look it up by location, and different things. So just kind of playing around with the system. It can be daunting. It can be exhausting sometimes, so search for a therapist. I will say that it's not going to be the easiest walk in the park, but don't give up because you'll run across somebody who's able to help.
So, and I can tell you to highlight that too. Since pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, a lot of therapists have started doing or getting clearances to do more teletherapy.
Yes.
I can tell you that there are networks. If you just Google text therapy, they have apps and programs to where you can just text therapists. I am a part of one network out here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And the other unique thing that I do like about the teletherapy that is becoming a lot more popular is the fact that a lot of counselors now are getting certified in other states to where they can cross international and state lines to be more of a resource.
Reciprocity.
The other thing is, and I can't remember it off the tip of my tongue, but I just learned about it. There is a group of counselors that are coming together to do free sessions. So they're doing pro bono sessions, and it's considered a tax write-off. This was more of a concept to give back to the community post-pandemic because mental health really went through the roof. So just play around on Google to see what, you know, some of those services look like, because they are out there. And what we can do, we should do a follow-up, and maybe we can do like a resource sheet and maybe share that in like future reference. But like, yes, there are some really unique programs out there that also just don't focus on insurance. The text therapy is super dope. A lot of times most people just want to be heard. So definitely look into those other resources. I love doing teletherapy, like love it.
I do.
But anyways.
And also, I forgot, you brought up a good point. The the CMH agency, they do general funds. So if you don't have insurance, they won't turn you away. You can still get funds from that, and it'll be probably a certain amount of sessions that you could get, but that could be a start to a path that you could, get the help that you need. Just have a listening ear, someone that's going to be there to prepare you, get you some skills in. And if they know that you're general funds and they know that you're, you don't have insurance, they're probably going to go straight into that skill building. So it's really good to just still try it out. Even if you're a little discouraged, keep trying, because there's going to be something that you're going to come across one day that'll help you out. As far as like the platforms, the telehealth platforms, you got things like Talkspace, Headspace, different things, and you can like Google that too. Like, what are the virtual therapy platforms that you can go to? I don't know as much about them as far as like insurance and like how they really typically do it, but there are options out there. So I don't think there's a lack of access. As we were talking about earlier, there's a lack of knowledge and a lack of awareness and trust in the system. And now being able to actually utilize these services that are there are going to be the key.
Absolutely. And don't forget to reiterate, we're redefining the word strong.
Redefining, yes. That was, period. Let's repeat that.
That was pure
emphasis.
Pure gold when you said that.
That will be this title.
Redefining. Have y'all seen my girls? Y'all know the girl off Insecure, the friend off Insecure. Not Issa, but her friend.
Yes.
She has a comedy show out right now, a new comedy show on HBO. Yes. That is the most. I felt like I was being read.
Right? It's Molly.
Molly.
Yeah, Molly.
Yeah.
Molly. The person who plays Molly. I forgot her name. I know her name. I just can't think of it right now. But like, she has a I'm gonna look it up because y'all need to watch this. Insecure, and she has a comedy show out right now, and I felt red. I was like, oh, girl, is you in my life or not? Because she was like really, really highlighting that mental health piece of it too in that show. It was funny, but it was also like, dang, this ain't too funny because it's me right now. But it was a good show, and she just really highlighted that for women, as you were saying, for that push that you give yourself, and it's good. Y'all should go watch that. Yvonne Orgy, that's her name.
Okay, so I'm gonna go watch that. Maybe not tonight. It's late.
It is late.
It is. But yeah, okay. So what was the other topic?
Domestic violence.
Yes. So I know that we usually talk about the other species on this earth.
Niggas. Can we say that word? Okay.
Yeah, but. And we usually talk about relationships and this, that, and the other, but we do want to, put everything out there. Like, we put everything on the floor. So
you gotta put it on the floor.
We gotta put everything on the floor. We can't leave some things out. We have to talk about everything. So, I mean, I know everybody didn't probably. I mean, maybe not everybody. I know I have been in toxic situations.
Toxic.
But the thing is, we gotta. Like, as far as this mental health thing, that is part of like mental health, trying to get out of a toxic relationship, bro. Mm-hmm. Like, it is hard. It's easier said than done. Everybody be like, "Oh, just leave that nigga alone." Da, 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 da. It's not that simple. It's not always the case, and it does become mentally draining. Like, and it's just, it's I don't know what it is. I'm not a specialist. I really don't know what it is, but maybe Jessica can iterate on it. I don't know what it is, but you really have to be a strong-minded person. I know we're trying to redefine this word, but you really have to be a strong-minded person and really have the knowledge to know that what you're going through, it's not okay, and it's okay to talk about it and to get help. Some people don't make it out of it, but we here to like try to give some resources to make it out of it.
Yeah. I think. Were you asking about like the survivors of domestic violence, like the people who experienced it, or like the people doing it?
Both.
Both.
Because let's not get it confused. Obviously, it's a mental health also.
It
but
is.
You're committing the actual. Yeah, you're committing the not to give excuses, but it is a real thing. That's a real diagnosis.
It is.
Yeah.
As a domestic violence advocate, so I've been working with the YWCA for the last 6 years.
Yes.
I'm going to give you just a little snippet of my story. Deanna knows me very well.
This is how we met.
She was there throughout some of my hard times, but that's what prompted me to become an advocate as well as go back to school and help people do better than what I did. Okay? So, and I say that lightly because I loved my children's father. Loved him. We were together for 6 years, and very abusive, very toxic, physical, emotional, sexually. And the day that I walked away was the day that he snapped and almost killed me. And I can tell you that as an advocate of domestic violence, that is the most dangerous part of really in a domestic relationship is when the victim really is ready to walk away.
Yeah.
You know, that assailant loses that control. But I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. When I started advocating, I did have to get to the root of what even attracted me to something like that, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of times we ignore those signs because why?
Love. Lust, whatever you
No,
want to call it.
it's not even love. I'm gonna give you one deeper. Trauma. So it's rooted back to our childhood, what we advocate and what we see growing up. So I grew up seeing my dad abuse my mom, and when you see certain things in your childhood, you tend to I like to call it generational curses. Okay,
It is.
and I thought it was a form of love. You know, and then you think about the cultural root of it. Most black men don't know how to express real, genuine love because they've been suppressed of it for over 100 years. And so it's like the blind leading the blind. And when I started really educating myself and understanding my trauma and understanding what my childhood looked like, that is when I forgave that man. But then that was also when I started getting to a point where I need to educate and advocate for women and say, hey, I truly have been there. It wasn't easy. I literally almost lost my life. And here I am 7 years later. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
And so when I advocate for women, the reality of it is redefining that strong word, but it's really understanding the root of how they got into it and finding that inner strength to say, I can surpass this. And they have to feel it and believe it and want it. They have to want it more for themselves than anybody else in their lives. And I never understood it until I was in the trenches with it. You know, people are like, why don't you just leave T? Well, I had to grow tired for myself and love me more than what people wanted to love me for. So you're talking trauma, you're talking worthiness, value. You got to see value within yourself. You got to see light at that tunnel without anybody else painting that picture or narrative for you. And it's a lot more that roots into it. And I can tell you, a lot of times the system is the other issue.
Yeah.
They set us up for failure.
Oh my
You know, there
goodness.
are no victim protections. You know, we say, oh, go in the courtroom and point them out. No one wants to go and point out the person who just traumatized them. You're re-traumatizing the victim.
And
Stop doing this.
A PPO is a joke.
And so, as advocates, it really is, sorry, my dog is on me. It really is a 24/7 job. My phone does not stop ringing. When a victim says, hey, I need a ride, I'm running, I'm on my way, because it's life or death at that point.
Yeah.
And then you're having these serious conversations, but the reality of it is most people don't want to hear it. What they want to hear is I'm tired. What can you do now? I'm ready. And then that's when I know for sure I have that victim secured. I'm ready to relocate them. I'm there. Yeah. And then I'm walking them through that court process. And then I'm advocating for them with that witness protection, saying, hey, what can we do with the charges that are being brought or whatever to not bring this person into the courtroom with this assailant? It's not fair. It's not okay. And it really does stem back to so many variables when it comes to domestic violence. It's so deep rooted.
It's very deep rooted.
I that is really where my passion came from as to how I got in the helping profession. Like, my domestic situation really opened my eyes that I should have pressed charges against someone who's still out here abusing women. That's the sad part. And so those are those, future traumas that we have to carry with. Every time I see that man get arrested or hear about it, I'm like, I should have done the right thing.
But that's not your behavior. I want to stop that because that's him. That it has nothing to do with him.
But see, that's me re-victimizing myself. And this is where, in my advocacy, we have to be true to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It never goes away. There's walls, there's barriers, there's fears. I haven't been in a relationship until now. It's been 7 years. This is the first. Like, come on now. It's a lot of growth.
Yeah. And
self-healing and self-loving that really goes into it when it comes to domestic violence victims. And I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, I like the fact that you said that it stems from childhood, right? Childhood traumas can go into our adulthood and how we react to things that we encounter. So, like, for you, you said seeing DV at a young age, you thought it was kind of okay. Like, you knew it was wrong, but you was acceptable to it, right? So you took that into your adulthood and you were victimized in that way. Another spectrum of that is something I would like to say, like, depending on your childhood traumas, it could rob you of your true self. And I always say that because that's the route you took. And in other routes, like in my case, seeing DV growing up, instead of me being that individual that allows someone to abuse me, I took the other spectrum, the other direction in another route as of, okay, I'm going to be this, standoff person, put this wall up, be very, protective, overly protective at times. And it caused me to be so hard in certain aspects that caused also issues in my adulthood when it came to relationships as well. With trusting, and I was my own turmoil when it came to relationships as well. And I didn't realize until I took a step back, got some counseling, and realized, okay, my past traumas from my childhood crept into my adult life, and it did interfere with just when I had relationships. I didn't become the one that was become a victim in that sense, but I became a victim of my own self because I was the I don't want to use the word downfall, but I was the cause of some of my failed relationships because of how I was towards that man, and it's only because it was me overtly protecting myself because I was afraid to even be vulnerable enough to become, I felt like, on the other side, right? To be physically, mentally abused, right? So I get that wholeheartedly. I always use that. My past traumas, to me, I feel like robbed me of my true self. Because, like, who's to say I would not have been this person if I was in a different environment as a child and seemed different, right? So, past traumas do have an effect on who you are as an adult.
Absolutely.
But once you realize that and you seek the the proper help and you work on those things, not to say it's going to be easy, it's still going
it's
to be a
not
long
easy.
battle, but as long as you realize that and seek the help, things do get better.
Yeah.
But that's only if you recognize that you do have an issue.
Right.
A person got to see it. They for sure got to see it. And they got to want it more than the support that they got around them wanted to. You know, I've been following Christian, Christine, and Blueface.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm praying for that girl.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm glad that she's getting to a point where she can publicly display it because she's growing closer to being tired.
Hopefully.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, it's levels to it.
Yeah.
I swear. And then you got the 7 stages of grief where you're like, oh, but I miss him and I need to go back. But then you're like, I'm going to kill him. And then you're like, I'm hurt and sad. It's real.
Those stages are very real.
And I can tell you that each time, interaction happens, it does escalate. It is so real. And I didn't realize it until, you start looking back. But when you start publicly displaying it, it's not for attention. It's because we are lost, so far gone, that all we know is to publicly try to figure out how to get out of it. So pray for that girl. I'm praying for her, y'all.
Definitely praying for her. I love her.
Yeah.
I do too. She just lost. She also need to keep her hands to herself. And see, that's the flip side. A lot of men are victims too, and they don't come forward. They do, and that's where I want to touch on that part because I know. I'm just saying, we
can come back after the break.
That flip side, DeeDee.
Yeah, no, we for sure gonna talk about it, but we just gotta go on break real quick.
No, you good, you good.
Yeah. All right, y'all.
Put it on the floor.
I swear to God, they do this every
Put it
time.
on the floor. Hey,
Every
everybody,
time.
welcome to Put It on the Floor. We're back with your host. Hey, y'all.
Always trying to cut into.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news. DeeDee, I did not know this was 2 hours. You didn't tell me that.
I'm so sorry. I sure didn't. You're absolutely
You
right.
didn't. I do gotta cut out.
That's fine. Love.
But it was such a pleasure being on this. I appreciate y'all.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for
appreciate
sharing.
it so much.
For sure. I love you, DeeDee.
Love you more.
Bye, girl.
Bye.
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 Okay. Well, what was we talking about?
So we picking up where we left off, or y'all want to go into something different? Because I can go into the signs of all this, because y'all need to be aware. What is domestic
and
violence? They do.
And do.
It is. And so
Talk about it, sis. Lay it on.
Put it on phone.
Put on the flow. And so domestic abuse, when you think of that, what y'all think of when you hear domestic abuse? What you usually think about?
Fighting, verbal abuse, emotional disconnect, because that could be for somebody, if that's that love language, that could be a part of it too.
What's the love language?
I mean, like having like that time with that person, like somebody that's very affectionate, or somebody that's just like, don't touch me, knowing good and well that's what you love. Like that's a very mild like part of like,
So what's worse, physical abuse or mental abuse?
I think it's equal. I ain't even gonna lie.
No, it's definitely equal. I don't think it is the
equal.
worst, because some people only experience emotional abuse, and that's like a lot. That can be a lot. If they only experience financial abuse, that means you stuck in that situation. So it's like physical abuse is one part of it, but it ain't even just about the physical. It can lead to a lot.
Because that could you can heal from that faster than you can heal from a mental. And then also, like some people just, you can get numb to that. But honestly, it's on both spectrums. Like emotionally, now you can cut off emotionally. You know. So I very much think it's.
I definitely think it's both. I don't think there's a worse for physical and emotional abuse. Abuse is abuse, and at the point in which you create the idea that one is worse, that's where you get stuck. because a lot of people don't even think they in a domestic abuse situation because they only thinking, oh, he ain't hit me or I hit him back. And that's still abuse, sis. Like, that's still something that you're experiencing. If he's controlling you, if he is like calling you down and like telling you ain't nothing and like all this other stuff, all of that is still abuse. It is not different because he didn't hit you or because you didn't hit him. Sexual abuse, I think Tamara mentioned that. Sexual abuse, being forced to do something, even if y'all in a relationship, if you don't want to have sex,
it's still,
that is abuse.
yes.
That is forceful. That is force.
There is a such thing as being raped while you're married.
Literally, you can be raped while you're married.
Like, oh, I can't believe I ever even heard that before. Like, I was like,
You can definitely be raped in marriage.
and it's still a murder if I murder you if we're married. To death do us part.
Ooh.
So, I mean.
Uh-oh. But yeah.
Oh, right. That was a hard one.
So when
It's
you're
the
talking
same thing.
about abuse in itself, abuse would be anything that you feel threatened, controlled in some aspect. And I mentioned financial abuse because for some people, if you're in a relationship and let's say your partner is telling you can't get a job, you're not supposed to be working, that is abuse. That is something where they're controlling you and preventing you from being able to support yourself. So now you're stuck there. You're stuck in that situation. And now, and Tamara, she mentioned this before she left off, it can go both ways. It can go both ways, like if a male or female. Women are not the only people abused in domestic violence situations. Using privilege for different things, intimidation in some aspect, like whether you're doing a loud voice, because some people do have trauma. We talked about that before the break. When you have trauma, you go back to that place of trauma where it started. And for you, Portia, you felt okay enough to mention this. If you can think back to when you were a kid and you witnessed that, how did you respond? Were you in like a flight mode? Oh. Can you hear me, Portia?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's like frozen though, but I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you repeat the question?
I said if you feel comfortable sharing, when you experienced that as a kid, like seeing DV, how did you respond as a kid? Were you the kid who hid? Were you the kid who fought back? Were you the kid who protected? Because you were the oldest. Are you the oldest sibling? You're the oldest sibling.
I am the oldest.
Exactly. So how did you respond?
Honestly, from seeing it for so long, like, honestly, from as young as I can remember, right, it wasn't much I can do because I was a child, right? But I remember at one point, I was 12 years old, and it got to a point where I just got tired of having my siblings come in my room because they're crying and they're scared, or even my mother, right?
Yeah.
After the fact of any things that happen, and she's confiding in me. I'm holding her.
Parentification.
And so that just hardened me, honestly. And it just got to the point where one time it was an incident, active incident that was going on, and my siblings came and got me and told me that mom and her person at the time was fighting. So at that point, I feel like I just had enough, and I reacted out of anger. And I took a broomstick, went upstairs, and got to beating this man in the head, you know? But
period. And
it got to the point, but what really hurt me is that my mom told me to stay in a child's place. So I said, because I'm like, here you are, to me, back then, I'm thinking from what I was thinking about back then, it's like, here you are, allowing this man to do this. You're not the only one being hurt by this. You know what I mean? We're being hurt because we got to see you like this. I'm being hurt because I got to be the strong one and hold you at night because you then went through this thing, and you telling me to stay in a child's place, like. So that just really hurt me, and how I reacted to it. Yeah, I became very violent and angered. I was angry a lot. I fought a lot in school, outside of school. I didn't laugh a lot. Like I was just angry. I was an angry child.
And I asked you that because when I say that you go back to that place of trauma, that's where you were already in a traumatic situation, but your reaction started there. And that's where you kept developing that trauma response. You were like, I'm in fight mode. I'm in fight mode forever because that's all I've known to do. And that's what typically happens when you're in a situation. So Tamara, she hopped off, but she might have been in a situation where maybe she hid, maybe she just kind of froze, or maybe she didn't know what to do. So her reaction could be different from yours because we all respond differently to trauma. And so for you fought. You were like, I'm a fighter. because you wanted to survive. You wanted to be able to survive
Yes.
that. And some people, when you have trauma, I don't know how many people are actually aware of this. I didn't learn about it till college, but like you have a fight, flight, or freeze response, and which means you literally fight in some form. You're like aggressive. You're trying to make a way out. You might freeze, where you can like, you don't know what to do or how to react, or you might flee. You're running. You're speeding off. You're anxious. You're doing different things just to kind of as a response to that trauma, and so. In your case, it was a flight mode, but as soon as you were able to, as soon as you got to that response, that's something that stuck with you because it was a learned survival technique, and that's what happens
it
with
stuck
domestic
with me
violence.
for a very long time. Like I took on this persona of being the protector. Right? For one, I was the oldest sibling, so that just falls in line with that anyway.
Yeah.
And then I was thrown into that role because I seen my mom so broke down, you know, physically and mentally, and I had to be the one that I felt like I had to take on that role to be the one that was strong in our household, because it was a single parent household. So it was just, that played a lot, you know, in a way of how I grew up and my mentality on things, and it became, and me and DeeDee, we've had these talks many, many times about how it's hard for us to be vulnerable because of these things, and that's something I'm still working on today, to be honest. That is something I'm truly still working on today. Like, even with my husband, I find myself at times not being as vulnerable or, you know, affectionate or whatever, but he's super affectionate. He's like super lovey-dovey, but he grew up in that was a learned behavior. He grew up in a very loving home where they hug each other when they first come in, tell each other they love them all the time and stuff like that. That's something I was not accustomed to.
Exactly.
So for me to be with somebody that's like that, it was uncomfortable for me.
It's like, why you like this?
To get used to, because I wasn't used to that. Even with guys that I dealt with before him, because they were more on the nonchalant side. So it was cool to me because we kind of seen eye to eye. That was okay with me. But yeah, that is definitely trauma.
It is trauma, and like I was saying, my therapist, she was like, you need to work on vulnerability, and I was like, girl, I am vulnerable, I'm a therapist. And she's like, no, you need to work on being more vulnerable, and I was like, sis, I am. And then she would give examples. Maybe sympathetic. And she's like, no. And so I'm right along with you, Portia. Kevin is like literally the complete opposite of me when it comes to like sharing emotions. He's so expressive, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
Like, what is going on? Why are you sharing so much? And why are you feeling so much? I don't feel this. I don't feel these things.
Oh shit, I ain't that bad, but yeah.
Oh girl, it was bad for me. And so I had to like redefine what that means and like rebuilding that trust, because for me, I didn't experience DV in my life, but I didn't have a father in my life at all. I have a sperm donor that I call and refer to. So like I didn't have him present in my life. So for me, I never knew what a man was supposed to be like, what a partner was supposed to be like. And so I blocked it off. I was like, niggas ain't, I don't know what I could say on the radio. Niggas ain't nothing. And so, Destiny joined in. They're not anything, and that was my idea of it. And so I knew that I had to be strong and like be able to take care of myself and be an independent woman, because that's what I was raised to do. You're going to be successful regardless of a man. And so that was my mentality moving forward. So when I finally got a man, he's like, I can be there for you. I can do these things to help you, and I can like be there. And I'm like, no, I got it myself. I can do all of this myself. And so when he was offering that, he told me, he was like, I don't think you trust me. I was like, I do trust you. I trust you a lot. Like,
I remember that conversation.
You're my husband. And he's like, I don't think you trust me. And I'm like, why do you say this? And he's like, because you're still trying to plan these things out without allow me to step in. And so when I brought that to my therapist's attention, and she was like, well, have you ever thought about the fact of how it makes him feel when you are always trying to do things on your own and like never allowing him to do it? And I was like, well, no. I never thought about that because I was so focused on me. And so
I got that bad because it come to the top. It come a point where I have a problem with it's like you used to being your own person, right?
Yes.
Strong, independent, all that stuff, right? So you used to being in control. It's the point where you feel like you have to let go some things and not be in control of it, and it gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Yes, it's anxiety. The control.
It gives me
Anxiety is
because
control.
when I do it, I know it's gonna be done right. It's gonna be done on time. It's gonna be done to my standard, which is the highest standard.
The highest.
You know what I'm saying? So like it. So I totally agree. We came to a point like that in my marriage as well, when it was like, I'll tell him, he'd be like, okay, babe, I got this. I'm gonna take care of this, and I'll be like, oh, okay. But on the back end, I already got a plan. On top of
Literally, I got a plan.
And he found out like, so you already did this? I'm like, oh yeah, because I thought you was busy. I'm trying to, make excuses. Like, oh, I thought you was busy. He was like, no, babe, I told you I was gonna do that.
He did,
like,
and it's not our time.
But because he wasn't moving at the speed that I wanted him to do it in, so I got anxiety. I'm like, okay, it's not gonna happen.
And it's not even him.
Really
Yeah, it's anxiety.
But granted, I never thought about how that made him feel, as like, she feel like
I can't
take care of my family. She feel like I can't, when she give me a task and I'm not going to complete it. And that was wrong on my end. Once he expressed that to me and we sat down and talked about it,
Exactly.
and I looked at it from his perspective, I understood. And I said, just bear with me, baby.
Period.
It's going to take some time. He was like, and I understand that because of how you are. I just need you to understand how I am. And I was like,
that's the only way it's gonna work.
And so now we just working on trying to,
I think that's the
find
only
that
reason that
balance.
y'all are married. See, I feel like that's the only reason that y'all are married. I'm not.
Yeah, no,
because it was an understanding on
Because
both
who
ends.
told you to get married without us at first? And then you want to go, don't worry about it. That's for another time.
Hold on.
what happened?
I mean, she ain't no bet. She not that much older than when I was. See, but I no, it was the person.
Really?
It was
Really?
the
Ava's
24. Yes. I've been married at 24. Yeah.
Hey, girl. You popped up in here? Oh,
Crazy.
snap.
We have all been married, guys.
You look good.
All of them.
I like the sweater.
You're right. You're looking.
I think that brother got a turtleneck.
It is a turtleneck, but it's okay.
Not
You're looking
penis.
real modest today. You're looking real modest.
Covered up.
A little whitish. Yeah.
But no, I think it's, I don't know.
Because it was more from, like, I took him, I can, take the blame for that. We were straight out of high school. So it was like, I didn't give him time to be a man. I didn't have, he didn't have the greatest father figure. So it's like y'all said, it's like that learned behavior. So, of course, I ignored all the red flags, every last one of them. He ignored mine. And it was more like, and then when y'all say, like, putting trust, I'm the opposite. I put so much trust in people too fast. I just be like, here, do it. But then when the lights get cut off, I'm like, fuck. Okay, now it's my turn. But I think I'm the opposite now. But I think that's why I'm really more like hard to love now. What the fuck?
I don't think you're hard to love. I think you've been through a lot of things, and things have made you question what people are like, and that's like because you've been through a lot. And so when it comes down to it, you are the oldest child as well. You're the oldest child, and you took on responsibilities as the oldest child to be a caregiver, and you care about people. And so with him, you cared a lot about him because you felt what he had to go through in his relationship without his dad, without his mom being present. All that stuff took a toll, and you're like, I'm his person. And with you becoming his person, he had things that he took advantage of and saw in his life too. I can give that. He had a lot of that he went through in his life, but he dealt with it in a different way. And that's when you get back to that domestic abuse situation, that cycle of abuse, because he took what his situation was and used it as ammo for you. And so because you're a person who cares a lot, you're like, no, I just want to help you. I want you to get to where you are. I know your potential, and I know where you can be. I see where you can be as a man, and like I want to help you get there. And he wasn't there yet. And like Tamara said, it's not just one way. Both people have to see and recognize that there's a problem. Not just the survivor or victim, but the person doing that too has to recognize that there's an issue. And so he never got there.
Yeah.
And he's still not there today. And so you are at a place where you are understanding of it. You understand that there's some things that you did. And I understand, and that's also a response too. Knowing that, okay, I'm going to try and protect myself this time around because I didn't do it right the first time. That kind of mentality. But at the end of the day, you are reacting to a trauma. And that is not fair to you to limit yourself because, like, the potential of what could be because of what you've experienced. You can be cautious. You can still take measures. But, like, noticing the green flags of what this person is doing for you, if they are giving you what you need in your relationship in ways that you have never gotten before, that is what you should be focusing on too. I don't think he ever did that. I've known him since since he was in the same amount of time we've known him pretty much. And so I don't remember him. There were obviously, y'all had y'all little pillow talk moments, so obviously something was there. But like I couldn't say that he was in the same space. So that's something you also have to recognize is like how much is this person like giving you what you need and how much of it is like something you can work on. Because Kevin could have been left me. Like he could have been like, I'm done with you, because the red flags might have been a lot for him. But he also saw a lot of green flags and support for him, and he stayed. And I used to be bucking against it because I'm like, I don't even deserve this man.
Shout out to Kevin.
Shout out to Kevin.
Shout out to my brother.
Shout out to my man, my husband. And so my man. And so, yes, I was at a place where I feel like I didn't deserve him because I was like, no, I don't even think I deserve this guy, like, who's treated me so well. And it's like, but no, you do. And he sees that. He's known me since I was 14 years old. And so he knows the kind of person that I am before we even got into a relationship. For me, a relationship was a nuance. It was something I didn't really know or understand because I had never been around. I've never seen a healthy relationship. And so I make it a point when I have my nieces, when I have my little cousins, they see us together because they can see a healthier relationship going around. You will know what a healthy relationship looks like. I get them, not often as I want to, but I get them in enough time where they like, where's Kevin? And so you can see like this healthy relationship being built because I've never seen that. I've never seen a healthy relationship put in front of me.
That is true.
Come on.
That is true. I'm still thinking
That is.
right now.
Yeah. Thinking in your head, who was a healthy relationship that we ever seen? No offense to anybody watching.
Honestly,
or
I've
hearing.
only saw one. I saw one, and I call him I call my Uncle Jeff, and he was my old high school assistant basketball coach who's still in my life today. Like, hence why I call him Uncle Jeff, because he treats me like a niece. But that was the only man that I saw have a healthy marriage and show me what like love was. Like, he was the only person I felt like in my life growing up as a young adolescent to show me what it meant, what it felt like to be loved by a male figure, you know? Because I can go and talk to him about certain things, he give me advice, and he gives me that. Baby girl, you need anything? Okay. You know what I'm saying? It was like, for me, it was like my father figure, honestly. And a very positive guy, very positive role model. Still to this day, big ups to Uncle Jeff. Like,
Big
I love
ups,
that man.
Uncle Jeff.
As if he was my blood uncle, because he showed me what a stand-up guy looks like, honestly and truly. He was one of the people when I brought my husband home for the first time, like, nah, you got to get checked off by Uncle Jeff, and if he ain't with it, I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have to talk, because he going to let me know. And so that's the only relationship I ever saw, and that wasn't until I was, like 15, 16, and I really didn't
And you
see that
already
often
experienced a
he
lot.
wasn't in my house. He wasn't in my household, you know,
Which is
or
fine.
in my immediate family.
Yeah, which is fine because it was so much happening in your household. Even if you did have both parents in the house, that still can be traumatic because of how they're unhealthy. But, you know, having that peace outside.
Outlet.
Man, ain't nothing like it. Not that I really have it.
telling
But
No, but
like
that's it's so tough. And I just feel like you never know until you know like what that even looks like. So the fact that we all had different reactions to trauma responses. And I use the word trauma. I've been using the word trauma a lot because I need people to know that trauma is real and it happens. It's not just a car accident or like sexual abuse or physical abuse. Trauma is a lot. Trauma is grief, and grief, Tamara mentioned the 7 stages of grief before with like some domestic violence victims, but grief can be anything. If you're thinking about a loss in any way, you done lost your job, you done lost a close friend, you done lost, and not just like death, but like you've like lost contact with them or like cut it out of your life in some form, that is a loss and you're grieving it in some form. So you're going to experience those stages. And that's kind of what happens when you jump into different relationships. You're grieving, like, what am I even experiencing right now? I don't even know what this is. I'm losing myself, or like whatever that self could be. And it could be a scary thing. It could be a very scary thing to experience. And so now you're fighting all these stages. I'm angry, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm like questioning, I'm bargaining. If I do this, then this will happen. And like all these other things are going on in your head. And it's like, you're literally going through those stages. You're going through each of those stages. And at some point you're at acceptance. And I can honestly fully say that I'm at an acceptance stage with like where I am in my relationship. I feel like we're at a really good place right now in our lives. And it took a lot to get there. We're in our 7th year. We'll be in our 8th year in April. And it's like, it's a lot. It is a lot to deal with. And so being able to recognize that there are some things that you have to work on in your relationship, that is normal. Being patient. If you're able to sit there with that person and like work on it, do it. But if you find that that person is not compromising with you, that person is not doing what you need to do, that is a cycle that you have to recognize. And you have to understand, you have to put yourself first and be able to say, this is not what I'm not benefiting from this. I'm not getting anything out of this situation. You have to put yourself in a perspective of a friend. If you can say whatever I've been through, and you can say, oh, if my friend was doing the same situation, I would tell them something differently than what I'm telling myself. That is where you need to start questioning, because we don't give ourselves grace. We don't give ourselves enough grace. We always think that we have to do better or be better or we're different, but it's not different. If you think about everything you've been through and you consider it about a friend, you will have so much more empathy. You'll have so much more understanding for them. You'll start questioning and looking at things differently. And so when you look at it different, you will be like, I've been through a lot of stuff. I've been through a lot. I've undergone a lot. Once you look at it from the perspective of, if my friend told me this story right now of my life, I would be like, what the heck? Like, what is going on with this person's life? And you would give yourself a lot more kindness and grace. So that's something to consider.
Absolutely. I love it here.
Therapy.
That's so fan.
Yeah, look,
Everybody needs
therapy. This is free healing session right now.
Free healing.
Absolutely.
Just being able to talk to it feels good.
Yeah.
Honestly.
If anybody want to chime in that's listening, just let us know.
Let us know.
You know, hold on. Are we accepting phone calls? Yes. If anybody want to chime in, y'all want have any questions for our certified therapist here, you can call us at 313-868-0331.
Oh, we got a number?
0331. Yep.
Okay.
You know the number. It's crazy. I did not think you knew the number.
No, I'm looking at it.
Oh, so you don't know the number. Tell me.
You ain't had to put that on the floor, though.
Yes, I did. That's the
Put it on the book.
But yeah,
DaeDae, you came in late. How
absolutely.
you doing this evening?
Listen, I'm a little behind. I don't know what time it was. What time is it, y'all?
Yeah.
But yeah, we had touched on, we needed you for like, to touch on the ADHD portion.
All right.
It's the face.
Well,
What that's like.
struggling,
Yeah, like what's your experience with that?
like, it's something serious, y'all. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Like, I read up on it a lot, and
Oh, you did some research.
I seen me in what I was reading. So basically, like, it is complicated. Keeping friendships or keeping a relationship or keeping anything, like keeping up with something, is complicated. Yeah, being very, I don't know how to explain this. Like, I always have these feelings where I feel down or something, out of nowhere.
Awesome.
So,
I'm listening.
y'all can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We just letting you speak, baby.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it definitely involves depression. It involves you can't focus for nothing. Definitely involves like it's a lot, but
What
I
is
feel
it?
like
Is it
when you take
affecting
your medicine,
anything?
yep, huh?
Like, what parts of your life is it affecting? Like, I heard you say relationships and friendships.
Yeah, relationships, friendships, jobs. It costs a lot, actually.
Like,
But
what you
at
be
the
doing,
same
though?
okay, even if I feel like my concentration be off. Like when it comes to doing something I'm interested in, yes, I could do it. But once I get tired of it, I'm not gonna be focused on it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's I don't like to be I like to be consistent with things, but if I don't like it, if I'm just doing it to do it, I'm definitely if I'm not enjoying it, you feel me? I'm not gonna be focused on it as I should be.
I mean,
How do you deal with living with ADHD, or how do you cope with it in your day-to-day life? Like,
You know, I'm supposed to be medicated, but I don't do that every day.
ooh, I thought you was gonna say something else.
man, me too.
I said,
I was like,
You thought I was going to say something else.
yeah,
how you just cope before you hopped on this call?
right.
Nah. No. I'm talking about, like, from my actual doctor. I remember going to a psychiatrist when I was a kid. So I had that always. It was always in a part of me. Like, the medication. It always changed, of course, but as I got older and
So
started
if you're not using your actual
Right.
medication, how do you, like, my question is, how do you cope with?
So I feel like if you used to taking the medication and you decide you want to get off of it and you not really ready, it's not good. Don't try it because then you just gonna be starting all over with whatever you just started.
So,
Like trying to get used to get the medication in your system, make you feel like you. Because for one, when I take that medicine, I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like I can do anything in the world. Like I'll be feeling like I'm Superman. Like my speed get better. Like I concentrate better. I feel like
so you
I'm
me?
me.
You're more productive.
Pro me.
Yeah, I get way more prepared. I'm me, but I'm not me. Like I'm not gonna be the jittery person, the laughable, the crazy DaeDae y'all know. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be very calm and just be like, "Dang, what's wrong with you?" Nah, I'm chilling. Just. Mm-mm.
And you don't like feeling like that? Is that why you don't take it, or what's the reason of you not taking
Yes,
it?
because taking that medicine is gonna be another substitute for a side effect that medicine gives me. So now I'm feeling like that. I need a that is an upper, but I need a medicine to take me out the thinking stage, the depression stage. You feel me? I can't just keep taking that medicine. I'm putting stuff in my body like I don't know what it is for. So doing that kind of took me in a deep stage. Like I gotta want me to do this. I don't want medicine to help me do this. You feel me? So,
And it's probably difficult.
yeah, it is difficult because my ADHD is tough, bro. It's bad. Y'all know this
I
though.
was
Y'all
kind
know.
of hoping Kevin would be here too.
Y'all know this. Y'all my
I was just
family.
about to say, like, okay, from our experience
Yes,
of
we know,
dealing
but
with
we just trying to
Yeah,
make
everybody else.
awareness for the
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
the serious y'all.
for people who don't
But-
really understand what she's saying, like, from people that's around her daily, we can definitely tell the difference. It's for sure a
Like,
difference.
did you
100%. 100%. 100%.
But it's not a bad thing. It's just
No.
like you can ask Daddy to do something and 5 days later. It's not funny,
That
but you gotta find the humor in these things when she's actually When she's actually
Yeah.
okay.
She said that, and you just people. It clicked for you, didn't you?
What?
The humor. We use humor. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Irritating. Don't worry about it.
My
But yeah.
bad. Go ahead.
So yeah, so I've also heard like, I've witnessed like when, and she's only partially telling the truth. I'm sorry, I'm gonna tell you the truth for you.
What happened? What I missed?
We're talking about DaeDae and her ADHD, how she is from us looking in, like from looking from the outside in, and she told us how she feels from,
The inside
from the
out.
inside out. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so one of the things I mentioned was how she, you could ask her one thing and she just 5 days later she still ain't did it. That's my biggest thing with her. But I've learned to be a lot more patient. Yeah, a lot more patient.
But like they said, if she on the med, she could build a tiny house in 30 minutes.
Period. Because the man sent me some blow. No. Now I'm promoting the medicine buzz. They don't know what it is.
Right.
Like I know what it is.
Like, but
No, I just really. Go ahead, D.
some ways that we can like some people, well, if somebody wouldn't know what it looks like and they just like, this motherfucker gets on my goddamn nerves, they just like okay,
Yeah, no, that's
some
the thing.
people really just be like, no, because she know what the fuck she doing, she understand this and the other. It's like, but it really is a diagnosis. Like, this really is a disorder. Like, you have to, really be looking into that and understand how this person is, how their day-to-day is, and to really know and how to pinpoint it, I'm crying. Not be doing this on camera, but it's okay. Yeah. But yes, so we just, my brother-in-law just joined in. This is Mr. Ashwood, so now we have Mr. and Mrs. Ashwood.
Mr. and Mrs. Ashwood.
This is the infamous who she's been gloating about,
Big tail.
But, okay, so right now we're still, we went back to ADHD since we had DaeDae hop in, and now we have Kevin hopping in.
A male perspective.
Introduce yourself, Kev.
Introduce yourself, Kev.
What's up, y'all? My name Kevin. Yeah, I think that's it.
I'm crying.
I am Mr. Ashwood to the Mrs. Ashwood over here.
And that's okay, man.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. So what do you do?
Oh yeah, so I am a licensed home advisor. I do real estate. I do advising with real estate. I also do a lot of D&I work within home, buying industry, and just really trying to make it more equitable for Black and brown people to be able to buy houses, and really trying to service the inequalities that we face as Black and brown people, really not knowing what to expect in that home buying process. So that's what I do.
Very good at it.
Yeah.
They're both very good at
heavyweight
it.
champion. He got a title belt with him.
He do have a title belt.
Yeah, I just came from karaoke. I definitely won that title.
They pass out bills at karaoke?
Right.
He stole it.
Yeah.
Oh, you steal? Oh, okay, I got you.
We do a little stealing up
mention
here.
that, on the air.
You said it's still. Oh, wait.
He gonna take it back though.
Maybe.
He
We'll
said
see.
that. Oh, never mind.
That's crazy.
No, we live.
But I thought we was talking about ADHD.
We were it's your job because you're good at your job.
Yeah.
But is it hard?
But
to
it's
do?
going to trickle down into what we're talking about though, because
For sure.
it's a lot of stereotypes with ADHD. A lot of parents don't even want to get their child that help because they're like, nah, he's not gonna be able to do this, she's not gonna be able to do that, or this is
That's real shit. Can I curse on this? Let me find out first. All right, so
the same thing.
I would say anybody that think they got ADHD, first you should tune into this program on YouTube.
Ooh, yeah.
It's called How to ADHD. It's a lot of resources there, and it's a lot of affirming information. If you think you might have ADHD and you don't really know if you do or not. I recently was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, which is very hard. I mean, I could talk all day about how difficult that process was as an adult to get diagnosed with ADHD. But
Stressful.
what really it comes to a point is a lot of parents, a lot of people don't want to test their kids for ADHD because they think that there's like this stigma attached to like ADHD, and that's like saying something negative about their kid if they say that they have ADHD. But what they don't realize is that that kid is already getting labeled and stigmatized with negative stereotypes about them. Even if you don't get them tested for ADHD, they're being called lazy. They're being called inattentive. They're being called scatterbrained. They're called disruptive. They're called all this other stuff, and that's really damaging to their self-esteem and their ability to like think of themselves as powerful or like creators in the world, because they think they're lazy. They think that they're less than, and it's actually freeing in a lot of ways to really understand that, like, no, it's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I'm scatterbrained. It's not that I'm any of that. It's really just that I have a different way of thinking than the way that some other people think, or that we call neurotypical. That I have a neurodivergent way of thinking, and that's not bad, right? That actually makes me more creative. That actually makes me just think in a different way. And if you could just tailor your lessons and tailor your way of teaching to the way that I think, then I can perform just as well as everybody else. It's just that you're tailoring your lesson plans in a way that isn't necessarily tailored towards me, or people that think like me, or people that have brain patterns that reflect mine. And so it's not necessarily that you're like stupid or any of that, or all the stigmas that people put on you as a person with ADHD. I was a person that used to get 4.0s and had ADHD. And so people didn't want to necessarily, diagnose me with it, because they're like, oh, only bad kids have ADHD. What that did is, when I went to college and I could no longer figure out the stuff that people were talking about on my own, I couldn't necessarily just like read the paper that was put in front of me and be like, well, I can figure it out, because, college is a lot more difficult.
And he went to Michigan.
It made me feel like I was less adequate, less smart than a lot of my counterparts, especially in the program like I was in computer engineering. And that made me feel like I didn't necessarily have the skills, when really it's just that my mind worked in a different way. I would say How to ADHD on YouTube is a great resource. Just see if the way that they're speaking reflects with you in your experience in school and life and all of that. And if it does, then seek help. I'm not going to hold you. It's very difficult as an adult to get diagnosed with ADHD. That's just because it's a lot of gatekeeping. You know what I mean? A lot of people try to abuse ADHD. They try to, say they got it so they can get on Adderall, all kind of stuff. So you are going to have to work hard at, trying to prove to doctors that you actually have it. But if it is something that affects you, you will test positive for it. You will show symptoms because your brain just thinks in a different way. When I did go through the test for ADHD, it was different than anything I could have imagined. It was they weren't asking me any questions about attention. They weren't asking me any questions about, it was random little games or whatever. And I was I don't know if I'm supposed to be passing or failing this stuff. I don't even know what this test is. But as a psychiatrist, they was able to look at that and be like, all right, you think different.
That's
That's
the
some good information.
absolutely.
That's how
That's
it
what we need.
was when I was a kid. They had me doing all this random stuff, and right, I didn't know if I was supposed to try my hardest or just,
Right. Am I past the feeling?
like, yeah, it was the same way, and I did it for a long time. It did take a long time to go through all of these people and read to them and do all these tests. It was crazy. Yeah.
I never thought about
like,
that.
Once I go back on kids, I feel like if you feel like you see signs that's different in your kids, and you gotta go check it out. It's important because it definitely can affect them when they get older.
Exactly.
And
It don't go away. It doesn't grow.
Yeah.
You don't grow out of
never go.
ADHD.
You cannot beat it out of them.
You
Yep.
can't beat it out
Can't
of
beat
your
it out of
kid.
them.
you can't beat it out of them.
And people
You
think they
can't-
saving them from a stigmatism. Like they think that like ADHD is this like putting this label on them that's going to like affect them for the rest of their life once they
They
put
already
this
affected,
label on them. But they're going to have a label on them regardless. Like
Period.
they're going to have a label for the rest of their life. People all my life call me lazy. When I was trying my hardest, people called me lazy all my life. People called me, you know, like, he's giving his bare minimum. He's just, you know, he's choosing to not pay attention in class. And that he's just lucky that like his bare minimum is still good enough for him to pass.
Couldn't stand that teacher.
But like that's like the stigma. That's what people think of a lot of ADHD patients, like that like they're just not trying hard enough, that it's like a reflection on them and they internalize that. I genuinely thought that I was just a shitty person who like had all this capability and just chose not to use it. And I think that I carried that on throughout college, thinking that like that was just a reflection of the kind of person that I am, is that I'm the kind of person that would give his bare minimum even when he got a lot more to give. And that's not necessarily a reflection on you. If that's something that affects you, and it affects so many more people than what we're actually testing for, we actually know about. And so if that reflects with you, if you're listening to this and you like hear it and you're like, you know what, I genuinely feel like that does strike a chord with me. That sounds like some stuff that my teacher used to say. That sounds like some stuff. Look at it. Look at the symptoms. Get tested. Talk to somebody. It's difficult. I understand that. But there are resources like the Imagine Center. You're going to have to wait, but hey, you've been waiting this long in your life. I mean, you've been waiting how many years at this point? You could wait a few more months. It's a wait list, but like you can do that. And just have that clarity. Have that clarity of mindset so that at least you know there are a lot of other things that look like ADHD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, a lot of stuff that like mental illnesses that will look like ADHD. Maybe you're afflicted with one of those. Maybe you have anxiety disorders. Maybe you have depression. Maybe you have PTSD, because a lot of black people in the community really have PTSD and aren't being treated for it because we're so used to it. Everybody done seen a gun in their life. Everybody done, you know what I mean? Like everybody done had violence put against them. Everybody has had a situation where they didn't know if they was going to live or die from that moment. Everybody had a moment with the police where they was like, I don't know what's really about to happen with this. Everybody. So we don't even see that as trauma. We don't even see that as like a traumatic situation. And that leaves reflections in your body of how to respond to that trauma, right? That leaves like reflections in your body of like, this is how I should react or whatever. And so that sometimes looks like ADHD. You think that you just can't concentrate, but really your brain is thinking about all the next possible dangers that could happen because you've experienced so many dangers in your life.
Yeah.
And as black people, we just get used to it. So talk to a professional. Figure out whether or not it's ADHD, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's PTSD. It doesn't make you weak. That's actually the strongest thing you could do. What's weak
Redefining strong.
is What's weak is having that mindset and be like, oh, I can do it all on my own, and you fucking up somebody else's life. You fucking up your kid's life. You fucking up your family's life because you so scared to say, hey, this thing happened to me and that shit really fucked with my brain and that really fucked with me when I sleep. I have nightmares about that shit. I have, like daydreams about it, and that really affects how I even interact with people from now on. Be honest about that. We are all going through it as black people. We all got some fucked up shit. I've been held at gunpoint. I've been chased by police. I've had fucking, my brother is incarcerated. He's incarcerated for 17 years. We got shit that's going on, and we make that shit normal, and that's traumatic for us. And it affects how we think in the real world. And so there's nothing wrong with you. That doesn't make you weak for saying, damn, that shit actually affected me. There's not strength in saying, oh, I just move on. I just can keep going. That's not being
you're
strong.
Not really. It's
you're
happening
not.
The other way.
It's really affecting you. It's really affecting the people that you love. And so you think that it's you being strong. And as a black community, we've called that strength. And it's not. It's really just a cover of trauma. And it's really maladaptive. It's really damaging to our community. So if you feel that way, I really, really hope that you see this and just look for a little bit of help there, because it's help available to you. I promise.
And this is coming from a black man.
Black man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Kevin.
That was a perfect way to close this out. Oh my God. We needed that from, we always got so many women up in here, but that was perfect. Having him hop in.
Again, thank you, DaeDae. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing your guys' story with us. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Jesse, for coming on here and spreading your knowledge.
Dropping some gems.
Your wealth of knowledge that you have in your field. And congratulations on passing that test, girl.
Period. Thank you. Black people do not pass that exam on the first try a lot. So
Period.
I'm very proud of that. Yes.
Black excellence.
And it's because of a gatekeeping thing again, but we'll talk about that another time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, that wraps up another episode of Put It On The Flow. So we had a little bit more of a serious conversation today.
Yeah.
Well needed. It up a little bit. Absolutely. We pretty much use this episode as a speaking point for healing and knowledge. And now with the information that was brought to us today, I hope everyone that's listening, if any of those things that we talked about affect you, please play this back. Write those numbers down. Write those Google accounts down. Everything that was put out, and use those resources because they're out there. They're out there to help you. It's not strong to stay silent. We redefine what strong means.
Period.
It's your girl, Lil P.
It's DeeDee. That's Jesse and Kev.
And
DaeDae. All right, y'all.
DaeDae.
See y'all next week.
The Ashwoods are out.
Highland Park. We run Detroit Radio.